Hi folks, welcome to another build video. I appreciate your interest in this computer, and this video is going to be here for you so that you can know what is going into this build or what has gone into this build. I'm sort of thinking of this in terms of the past compared to how you're sort of seeing things there in the future. So this is not yet built from my perspective, but by the time this video is out, it will have been built. Kind of a weird thing. But anyways, I'm going to go through the parts here, and one of the things that I want to emphasize about this build that makes it more special compared to others that I've done in the recent past is that I'm using mostly brand new parts on this build. Typically I go around and I look for the best deals that I can, and I pass those savings on to you. But you know, this time around, I decided I wanted to make something really nice for someone who wants to buy something really nice. And so that's what this is going to be. And you're probably noticing already that this is going to be an Intel build. Also, very different from what I normally do. I usually do AMD builds, which if you take a look at my shelf on my wall over here, I've done quite a few Ryzen builds here semi-recently. So this is kind of different territory for me. I'm going to do some Team Blue today. And yeah, so I'm glad you're interested. I'm going to go ahead and let you know right now what's going into this thing. So starting from the left-hand side over here, you guys can see the power supply. This is a very, very reliable, very good power supply done by Thermaltake. It's a 500 watt, 80 plus white rated power supply. As you can see, it has a 5-year warranty. Not that you're ever going to need to use that, but what it is just a really good indication that this is meant to be a very reliable power supply. That's a very, very hefty warranty, a very nice guarantee there from Thermaltake. And so, yeah, I think it's gonna be perfect for this. It'll be plenty of wattage. It's got plenty of power on the 12 volt. And so it should work really, really well for this. It's black. It's got black cabling. It's not modular or semi-modular, so it's not like super awesome. It's 80 plus white, not 80 plus bronze or 80 plus gold. But I think it's completely appropriate for this build, and those lower costs that I am experiencing by using a lower cost power supply in this case are savings that I pass on to whoever's going to buy this computer. So no one's going to see this power supply. It's going to be hidden. We're going to use most of the cables, and so it's perfectly adequate, and it'll do the job. It'll do it reliably, and it's got that warranty. So I just thought it was a really good choice for this one. So yeah, moving on to the right hand side, I want to look at the cooler. So this is going to be the CPU cooler. It's made by a company called Up Here, and some of you might be familiar with this brand, some of you might not be, but I've used these in the past, and I think they're very, very good coolers. Again, it's something that I feel like comes in at a very good level of quality that maintains a low cost. And you guys can see the detailing on this. This is a black tower cooler that I added a little logo to it. Hint, hint. That's going to be a part of the theme of this build. And I just think it looks nice considering the cost, and I'm very confident that it's going to perform well. Plus, we get a little bit of LED bling going on. This is going to be a red LED light up fan that this cooler is using. So I think it's going to work really, really well for the theme of this build, and it helps to keep some of the costs lower where we can while still maintaining a very good level of performance. Okay, so that's our cooler there, made by Up Here. Moving on to the big kahuna. This is our graphics card. It's an RX 580 8GB Asus Strix top. That means that this is, as far as Asus is concerned, this is their top of the line best RX 580 that they make. It's a 3-fan model. It's going to be cool. It's going to be quiet. It's going to perform better probably than any other RX 580 on the market. If you guys aren't familiar with the RX 580, it's a very, very common card. A lot of people are running these days. It's beautiful for 1080p at very high settings. It works really well. We're talking 60 frames or more, 1080p, high settings, very easily, yeah, even in AAA titles. My friend, one of my friends, has been running a 580 for a while. He just recently switched over to a 5600 XT. It's about a 30% boost. He was using an RX 580. He was running on a 4K television, and it just looked beautiful. He was able to get 60 frames with modest settings, even on really, really new AAA titles like The Division 2 and others. And so it just works really well. It's a very, very good card. And it's not easy to get a Strix model such as this at a decent price. And so I got a really good deal on this, and I think that it's going to make this build look and perform really, really well. And so obviously we're shooting for high performance at 1080p with this build. So yeah, that's going to be our graphics card. It's brand new in the box, and so there it sits. Down below here, you guys will see the RAM that I've selected for this build. This is a brand new set of Guile or Jill, I guess. I'm not sure how to pronounce the what do you call branding, but it's their Evo X2. It says hardcore gaming memory. It's memory. Most memory is the same. Everything, you know, when it comes to memory, it's made by 3 different companies and it's branded by a bunch of others. And so this is not really any different than any other RAM, except that it looks really cool. This is going to be an RGB kit of RAM running at 3000 megahertz with the XMP profiles activated. And I think it's going to look fabulous. It's a nice hefty set, so the heat sinks on there are really good quality. And of course it's going to be compatible, as it says here, with our Aura Sync, which is an ASUS RGB software controller. So it's going to work really well. It's going to look beautiful, and you guys will see what that looks like when we finish the build. Moving on to the processor, we are using this very special Core i5 9600K. I've never used an Intel processor that is this good before. This is not by any means the best i5 you can get, or excuse me, not the best Intel processor that you can buy. You can spend a lot more money and get something a lot more powerful. But we're shooting for 1080p high settings. This is going to be perfect. It's a 6-core processor. It is unlocked, but I'm not going to be doing any overclocking with this. You guys will see from the chipset, I'm using a really nice chipset. I think that it's going to work just fine running at stock settings. I don't feel like messing with overclocking this at all. But it is a chip that can be overclocked if it's put into a chipset that allows overclocking. But I think this is going to be perfect. It's going to run about as well as a 3600X. So if you guys are more familiar with an AMD product, the AMD 3600X is also a 6-core processor. The main difference being that the 3600X would be a hyper-threaded part. This does not have a hyper-threading. But in all cases, higher clock speed is going to be much more useful in a gaming PC than hyper-threading is going to be. So this is going to get, this just performs very, very well. Clock for clock on a lot of titles, this will perform as well, believe it or not. This will perform as well as a 9700K and even a 9900K, depending on the title. Because it just has really fast, good cores. It has 6 of them, while the 9700K has 8 and the 9900K has 8, and it's hyper-threaded. Not all games at this point in time use that many cores, and so 6 cores really is plenty. for titles, even new AAA titles. This is going to perform really, really well. You could even like use this. You'll be able to use this. Let's put it this way. This will have more longevity to it than this card. So you might very well down the road get a more powerful graphics card, and this processor will handle a more powerful graphics card no problem. Like this can take more graphics. So it's going to be good. This is a very, very high quality part, and I'm actually really excited to use this thing and see how it works, and I can't wait to get it into this build. So that's the processor. As for the motherboard and its chipset, we are going to be using yet another Asus ROG Strix part. It is going to be the B365F Gaming, and I think that it just looks fabulous. It seems to have really, really good power delivery. It has a lot of really awesome options. I think it's just a really high quality board, and you guys can see that just for yourselves there. This is going to be very, very nice. It's going to handle this CPU beautifully, and I think all in all, this combination is going to work out really, really well. It's going to be a perfect high quality 1080p experience for basically any game that you want to play. And just so you guys know, I didn't mention that's a 16 gigabyte kit. So we're getting 16 gigabytes of RAM with this build. 16 gigs is good. That's what we need these days in order to play games well without having to deal with any RAM bottlenecks. Some people choose to use 8 gigs. 8 gigs, in my opinion, is not enough. I think 16 gigs is more appropriate for playing games. And even 32 gigs is great if you're running a more powerful processor and you do other things besides playing games, like other really intense workloads. But for gaming and just regular computer use for regular people, 16 gigs typically is way more than enough. And this is a high quality kit that is going to look very nice as well. So the only parts here that I don't have in yet, at least at this point in this video, are the SSD, which is coming. It's going to be a Western Digital green 128 gigabyte SSD that is in the M.2 form factor. So it's going to have an M.2 SSD for its boot drive. It's going to be a nice, fast, snappy little SSD to run the operating system on. And I'm going to include in this build a 500 gigabyte 2.5 inch hard drive, just to give you some extra storage. And of course, you can always add more storage yourself. I feel like that's a more personal choice, and so I try not to stick too much storage into a computer just because it adds a lot to the cost. A consumer might not need that much storage. They might only play 2, 3, 4 games, and some people might need a much larger library on their computer. I mean, most people, if they have a large library of games, they already have a drive where those games exist, or an external drive or something that they would use on their own. So I just don't like to add that to the cost. So I put a nice fast SSD in it, and if somebody and I also, put a little extra storage in there, 500 gigs. And if somebody wants to add more storage to this device later on, they will totally be able to do that. And that way they can make that choice on their own, decide how much they want, decide what kind they want, how fast it needs to be, all that stuff. I leave that up to the person to do later down the road. But the storage that I am going to put into this thing will get it up and running, get it running really, really nicely with a Windows 10 operating system, and have room to spare for plenty of games to play. So those are the parts that are going into this build. If you guys are curious about the enclosure, the case that this is going in, I'm still waiting for that as well. It's going to be a beautiful RGB case with RGB options. coming in from Roswell, which is a company that I think is owned and operated by Newegg. So it's like it's their own company that produces a number of different products, including PC enclosures. It's going to be very, very nice. I would show it to you right now, but you'll see it in a matter of seconds, because once it's here, I'm just going to add it to the video and edit it in, and you'll be able to see it for yourselves. It's just not sitting here at the moment. But I am planning on mounting this card in the enclosure, the graphics card here. I'm going to mount it vertically, because if you get a card that looks like that, you should show it off. So it's going to be in that enclosure, mounted vertically rather than horizontally. And so I'm waiting on the case, and I'm waiting on the what do you call, riser card? Sorry, the riser cable that sticks to the bottom of the graphics card and plugs into the motherboard so that you can mount it vertically. And it's going to look phenomenal. I'm really excited to build this one. It's going to be hard to let this one go. I feel like I have a feeling that this is going to look so sweet. And it's going to work so well and just be a beautiful, beautiful computer. So whoever ends up actually buying this thing, I think that I'm going to have it at a very reasonable price for what you're getting, and you're going to love it. So anyways, thanks for your interest. Let's move on to the case and the build itself. And here it comes. Every once in a while when I build one of these computers, there's a certain amount of attention to detail that goes into something. And sometimes I don't have a way to really illustrate that, but this time I do have something. Just to kind of give you guys a look into some of the stuff that I do when I'm putting these together, that, you know, you're often not going to get from a company that does a pre-build, is seeing an example with this little guy right here, which is the fan hub that comes with this case. And basically what I've done is I've added some magnets to it in order to extend its reach so that it can fit nicely into this part of the case for better cable management. You can't exactly put it in there with the magnets that come attached to it, because it's just not enough reach when you're looking at the area where they expect you to put it. There's a lot of obstacles in there, a lot of raised areas that just don't allow for this to sit in there very well, and it just wants to wiggle around, it wants to fall down, and if it does that while the computer is in operation or when you move it or something like that, it can be really annoying. And so what I've done is I've repurposed some magnets that I found someplace else. I've added them to the magnets that are already attached to this hub, and now this thing will just sit right up in there firmly, like it doesn't want to move. Before, it was just falling out. And so that's the kind of thing that, you know, someone who does this for fun as a hobby can do for you when you're looking to buy a computer. I take pride in making sure that I keep those little details in check so you get the best possible outcome with the parts that are selected. But this is the case anyways, so that you guys can see it before I actually build in it. I've got the box right over here, because I can't remember the actual model off the top of my head. I got it right here. Yeah, so this is the Roswell Zircon. So Roswell makes a number of different cases. This one is known as the Zircon, and there you can actually see the name of it on the little product overview pamphlet that they give you that explains all the different components and things like that. I thought it looked really nice. It was relatively inexpensive, especially for a case that has vertical mounting brackets. And so I'm really excited to build in this thing. It actually looks much nicer than I expected. It's got a nice sort of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, almost like a carbon looking finish. Like it's not shiny. It's got this nice dull black to it. It just looks really good. And these LEDs here are going to light up beautifully to give us some RGB. And obviously it has an RGB fan included in the back, as well as just a regular standard sort of 120 millimeter fan in the front. And both seem to be in pretty good shape. Like they're looking like they're pretty high quality for a brand like Roswell. So yeah, that's what the case is looking like before we put the components in there. And yeah, just wanted you guys to see some of that attention to detail that goes into this. You know, and I decided before I move on to the case and I move on to the actual build, I'm going to do what any responsible builder is going to do when they get brand new parts. I'm going to actually put everything together and make sure everything's working. So, you know, you always have a chance whenever you buy new parts that you might have to RMA something because you just get something that's defective. So you don't want to put it all together inside the enclosure until you test everything. And so I guess I'm just going to go ahead and unbox the stuff that I have sitting here and put it all together and get it running sort of like as a test bench. And that way I can make sure everything is working before I do the full build. And so I'm starting with the motherboard here. I've got it out of its box, so you guys can see the box itself is there. Here's the motherboard. It's in a nice static-free bag like they normally come in. It comes with some standard things for a board such as this. This is the RGB connector cable thing that it comes with. It's usually going to be an extra bit because typically anything that you would plug into this that has RGB capabilities, it's going to have its own cable, so it's got an extra cable for you. It comes with some SATA cables for hard drives and SSDs, 2.5-inch SSDs. So it comes with a bunch, which is awesome. It has some zip ties for cable management, which is kind of nice that they include that. Inside the box, there's a whole bunch of decals and stuff like that. Like this came with all kinds of cool stickers and stuff. And obviously it also has a little manual, which I'll probably make some use of a little bit later to make sure that I have the RAM in the correct slots. Because this has 4 DIMM slots. I have 2 DIMMs. I want to make sure I put them in the right slots. Anyway, so let's get it unbagged. Okay, well here's the motherboard out of its bag. And as I suspected, it is absolutely beautiful. Just to give you guys a closer up look at that, so you can take a look just how nice and high quality this motherboard really is. It's got a lot of SATA ports here, oriented in a very nice way for cable management. Got all your different connectors and ports and things down here. It just looks beautiful. Right here, I suspect, is where the M.2 is going to go with this beautiful Republic of Gamers, I guess, engraving on there. It's just really nice. It's got a little bit of, I think it's got a little bit of plastic on there that I can peel off in a little bit. Yeah, just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful board. It's looking good, looking really good. Okay, so I've got the processor here out of its box, and I'm just checking it out, making sure it's looking okay, and it looks like it's in great shape. And man, this is the first time I've ever held one of these current gen Intel processors. It just feels high quality, man. Like, it just feels good. I love computer parts. Obviously, you guys might be like, okay, he's getting a little weird. I like holding computer parts in my hand. I like touching them. I like checking them out. And this one is really nice, I gotta say. I'm very impressed so far just with the experience of putting this thing together, even at this early stage. But that's what it looks like out of the box in its little plastic container. It came in this little cardboard thing. It didn't have much to it. It was just a little cardboard skeleton inside of its little Core i5 box. Obviously no box cooler included because it's a K processor. Comes with a little booklet, I guess. And of course the little sticker, which I'm going to be putting on the build somewhere where it will look cool. So everybody can say, hey, look, he's got an awesome 9th gen Intel processor. And yeah, so that's all that came in that box. I'm going to go ahead and seat that processor. Okay, so I've got the processor seated, and this thing popped out of there very nicely. I thought that was really cool that they put a little Join the Republic sticker on there. But there it is in its nice, cozy little home. And so the next step is going to be figuring out how to get that cooler on there. I've never done one of these sockets before, so this will be fun. But yeah, it's looking nice. Actually, I might go ahead and... yeah, I think I'm going to do the cooler next. That way I don't have the RAM in the way or anything like that. And then I'll do the RAM, and then I will do the graphics card, and then I'm going to plug it in and make sure it is all working. Well, there we go. I have the cooler on there. Very easy to install. I have handled some doozies in my day. This one went on there very nicely, and as you can see, it's good and firm. I can now grasp the board from the cooler, which is a good sign, and it's actually a good practice. at this point, if I need to move this board, that is probably how I will handle it from this point forward. Just because I don't want to be putting my hands on any of the components. Obviously, I need to plug it in still. There it is hanging off to the side there. But dang, already, it's looking fabulous. And that sticker is just making the difference. It's making the difference, I tell you. Those little things, man. Those little things that make it pop. Okay, well, there it is with the cooler on it. I have added the Core i5 to my wall of boxes, mine collection. And there it shall stay, hopefully forever. Because I keep that. That's mine. It makes me, it's a memento. Anyway, there it is. I'm gonna plug it in, put the RAM in, and that's where we're gonna go next. All right. Well, here is our RAM. I've pulled both DIMMs out of the package and just to inspect them before I install them. This is, like I said, this is a 16 gigabyte stick, and you can see there, this DIMM itself has 8 gigabytes of RAM. It is CL16, 1618, 1836. And I believe this is actually specifically meant for Intel. So this isn't necessarily meant to go into a Ryzen PC. I actually have a kit like this for Ryzen processors in my house somewhere. This is for Intel. And here's the other DIMM here. Yeah! Looking good. Same stuff. And it's going to go right here. Okay, so we have the RAM installed at this point. I think I've got it seated good. I believe I have it in the correct position with basically using the further 2 slots that are provided there. That way we get in a dual channel. And yeah, it looks really good. Like, I am starting to just be like, I'm kind of astonished at how well it matches. It just looks very nice. Part of me is considering moving that fan just to spread the RGB out a little bit, because I'm going to have these sticks glowing red and I'm going to have this glowing red, and so perhaps it might be best to have the fan on this side just to move it around. And it isn't going to really matter if it is pushing the air or pulling the air. You know, it's just an aesthetic choice that I might make, but man, I don't know. It looks kind of cool like that. A couple things I noticed about this RAM. This little part here on both sticks is kind of loose. I'm not sure. You guys might be able to hear it. I'm not sure if it has some kind of function or something. I'm going to take a look and see if there's any, like, I don't know, no directions or anything in the box. No, yeah, there's nothing in here about any of that stuff. I noticed it had a little tiny arrow on the back of the thing. Anyway, I don't know what. I think it's just there for looks, and so it just kind of hangs on there. But whatever, it doesn't really matter as long as it works, and that's what we're going to be checking here in a minute. But so far, it's looking fabulous. Anyway, moving on. Gonna do the. I guess we're ready for plugging the graphics card in and unboxing. Well, I got to unbox the graphics card and I got to unbox the power supply and then plug it all in. So that's what I'm going to do next. Well, here's our power supply removed from its home, its packaging there, and it's going to be going into its new home very soon. And I just wanted to give you guys a look at this as well because it's really pretty, even though it's not the most impressive power supply in the world, but if you like computer parts, I'm sure you can appreciate this one as well. It does have some ketchup and mustard going on, but I have my ways. That won't be an aesthetic problem once we get there. But here are its credentials on the back, and so the important parts to look at: the total power 500 watts, and on the 12 volt line there you have 420 watts, 35 amps. That's going to be plenty of power for this graphics card and everything else going on here. And there are cool little decals on all sides of this. So if this was an enclosure that showed it off, you would be able to see it. And it actually looks really nice. It really does. So yeah, just your average run-of-the-mill power supply. and it'll suit our needs very nicely. I don't know if you guys out there have ever unboxed an Asus product like this, but they just do such a wonderful job of, I don't know, just having a really lovely presentation. This is part of the experience of paying a little extra when you buy something from Asus. You just know you're getting, I mean, typically, you know you're getting the best. I mean, they don't just throw something in a plastic bag. They put the, what do you call, software and stuff into this nice little case. Got a little gold Asus thing on there. I mean, it just looks great. It's really cool. I was just really appreciative of that as I'm opening this thing up. But yeah, that's basically what's in here. It's a little, I think there might be a sticker or something in there too, maybe. We'll take a look in a minute. And then this comes off. Nice piece of foam. Not that it really matters as long as it does the job. And then there sits the beautiful graphics card, which also comes with little cable managers, which I thought was really cool, man. Little ROG cable manager thingies. But yeah, I'm gonna get that thing out of the bag. But I thought you guys might like to see at least just a little bit of what this card looks like coming out of the box. Okay, folks, well, here is the beautiful graphics card, the RX 580 that I have unboxed now and unbagged. I just wanted to give you guys a bit of a closer look at it. A couple of important tips. If you're ever in this situation where you're handling one of these ROG Strix cards, be very gentle with the fans. Those fans are super well designed. They do a fantastic job. Fantastic, sorry, pun not intended. They do a wonderful job of keeping this thing really nice and chilly, but they are super duper delicate. So don't press up against it with a thumb on accident. You might snap one of those guys off of there. They're just very delicate fins. This is meant to be handled with care. Just so you guys can get a glimpse of the back. There's the beautiful black, well, yeah, it is black. The beautiful black back plate, which is metal, and it has a plastic cover on there that I'm going to peel off in a minute. And then you can see the little Strix eye that's going to light up with RGB. Okay, so we have it mounted on the board there, and you know, I don't know about you guys, I just love the way this is looking. I've been wanting to do this build for a very long time. I've wanted to do a Strix build for a very long time, and I'm finally doing one, and I'm just really enjoying it. So I hope whoever ends up with this enjoys it as much as I've enjoyed building it so far. But here's what it's looking like with all the beautiful components together there. And man, I just think it looks great. Okay, folks, so the time has come to power this thing on. This will be the first boot for these components working together here. And before I ever do something like this, I like to say a little prayer. I am a man of faith, and I just like to recognize God's hand in the things that we do, and just to approach things like this humbly, realizing that I can't control everything. This is not something that I can make work, and that I have to depend on God for all things. And so, Heavenly Father, we just ask you today to lend us a blessing here as we're working on this computer. Please, Lord, I just ask that all these components work, that there aren't any issues, that I can get a good boot here without any problems, and that the parts that are on their way arrive in a timely manner, and that they work as well. They're not here today to test. And so, Lord, I just pray for these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so I got to turn on the power over here to the power supply, and I already have a good sign there. We got an indicator saying that it's in, I believe, standby mode. So we got a little power indicator there. Very, very promising. The RGB on this fella there is already lighting up. I think I'll go ahead and turn that off for a second so we can see that. That is just spectacular. Very vibrant RGB going on there. Just wow. Okay, so as far as I know, the power indicator is going to be connected at this point here. And so I'm going to grab me a little screwdriver that I typically use for this. Actually, I think I'll use this one because I think it's the right size. Not that the size matters, it just tends to be a little bit easier. And all you got to do is jump the positive and negative terminal there for the power, and it should come on. And there it goes. Wow. Let's get some lights off here. Holy smokes. That's a lot of RGB. Okay, so no post on the screen yet, but that doesn't really scare me. We are plugged into this thing here. I think I ought to turn it on and off because the screen's kind of old and it sometimes needs a little kick in the pants to wake up. No signal yet. Let's see, we're getting an indicator, a little light indicator over here. Oh, there it goes. Beautiful. Wow. It's just so quiet that I didn't even hear it doing its thing. Notice here the graphics card is on and yet it's sitting in totally standstill mode. I just think that's the coolest thing that you get in these modern cards these days. No fan mode when there isn't a real load on it. And it's, but this is a beautiful screen right here. This means that everything is working wonderfully. It detects all of our memory there, 16,384 megabytes, 16 gigs. It's running at a default mode of 2133 megahertz, but we're going to turn that on. We're going to turn on that XMP profile in a little while, probably not today. Not until it's actually ready to build. But yeah, it's just really awesome to see it working. It's awesome to see that CPU fan just pumping air, and it's just so quiet. I can't hear it. I can't hear it, guys. Oh, it's just beautiful. I'm gonna have a hard time selling this. Let's turn the light off again so you guys can see some of this RGB action. I like RGB. Some people think it's kind of silly. I think it's great. It's a wonderful way to customize your own PC. Look at that RAM. Isn't that beautiful? As it cycles through its different color ranges. Just gorgeous. And I love the fact that this thing is at default red, because red is what I'm going to do. So that works really nice. So you got this indicator here that lights up. You got the lights on the front of the thing that light up. So that's the whole... Oh, it's out of focus. Sorry, guys. Focus. There we go. And there's also, though, another, cool thing on the back there. The little light for the Strix Eye lights up there as well. So yeah, looking great. Just really digging this thing. And here's I'm going to do a little sky view here. Nice. Yep. So it's working. All the parts are in order. All the important parts anyways. It seems to be working flawlessly at this point. I'm going to go into the BIOS and check a couple things out. I'm just curious. And then I think I'm going to call it a night for now. And then we're going to build this thing. Once the rest of the stuff is ready to go. For you, it'll be like that. Okay, I figured I would go over the storage solutions that are going to go into this machine. The first thing I have here is a WD Western Digital Blue, I should say, 500 gigabyte hard drive. It's a 2.5 inch hard drive. This is just going to be for basic storage. You'll be able to put whatever you need on here on a more long-term basis. It's not a huge capacity. But it'll be good enough to get you started, like I've said before. And it's not the fastest hard drive in the world, but it's just it's a good quality hard drive. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and you'll be able to put some games and stuff on this, and it'll just be a little more storage to tide you over until you decide on your own solution. Like I've said, I feel like that's kind of a personal choice, how much you need and what kind. And as for the... Sorry about my kiddo in the background. As for the boot drive, this is what we're going to be using. It's a Western Digital green, 120 gigabyte solid state SATA drive. So it's not NVMe, and you can tell by, I forget what they call this thing down here, but the part that actually plugs into the motherboard, you have two little gaps in it rather than just one. NVMe drives tend to just have one little white gap, as compared to two little white gaps that we see here in this picture. Now, in truth, an NVMe drive is a lot faster, but we're talking about the difference between a jet fighter and a flying saucer, I guess, because an NVMe is ridiculously fast. Like, it's so fast that for most people on most applications, especially for a boot drive, they're not going to really be able to tell a significant difference between this for everyday use and an NVMe drive. Like, it's just not going to be a significant difference for what this PC is intended for. So I thought this was a good way to go. It's much faster than a hard drive, like a regular spinning disk. It's about as fast as a 2.5-inch SSD. However, what's nice about this form factor is that it doesn't take up any space. It's just going to go onto the motherboard. I'll show you guys where it's going to go. It's going to go right underneath this cooling solution here. So these two little screws will come out and it'll plug in right there. Now I could, in theory, plug it in right here, but that is not, there's no reason to do that. Might as well leave that open in case you ever want to add another drive. You don't want to have to add it over here. You can very easily just plug it in there. So you want to plug up the more inconvenient one in the first place. And also, this tends to be, on most motherboards, it tends to be the faster plug-in. Like, sometimes there's a difference in speed between those two. And so if you're going to be using an M.2 drive as your boot drive, you want to plug it in where it's going to go the fastest. So that's where it's going to go there. This one will stay open for later use if you want to plug in another NVMe drive or something like that, or another SATA drive. Okay, so I've got everything assembled, even with the hard drive now. I've installed Windows 10 Professional, and it's running really well. I've got the Aura Sync software working good, so I've got everything just synced to static red in this case. That's probably what I'm going to leave it at, but of course you'll be able to change it to whatever you want if you end up buying this thing. And so there it is, running Windows. I just wanted you to see that. I'm outside right now in my garage, and the ambient temperature is probably about 65 out here, I'd say. And that's what the cooler is running our 6-core processor at, in that temperature. So it's hard to, that's not what it will probably be like once it's in its enclosure, but obviously the cooler is working well, because that is really nice and chilly. So yeah, it's working good. Just to give you guys a look of the Aura Sync software, I'll go ahead and click on this guy right here. We'll open her up. I'll go over, I've got all this stuff, the memory, the card, and the board all updated. And we can go to the effects, and this is where you'll change all of that stuff, so you can change it so that it's breathing. Excuse me. There it goes, it's breathing. You can have it cycling through different colors, which is really cool. I kind of like the way the purple looks. I wish that the fan was purple. I'd probably put it at purple. You can make it do a rainbow vomit if you want. You can have it do a starry night, whatever that means. Whatever color you want. It goes all flicky flicky. This is kind of interesting. It has this a smart mode that basically changes color as your CPU changes temperature. So I thought that was interesting. I don't know what this dark mode does. It says no settings available, so I don't think that applies to anything. Then there's this music mode, which I think does something while you play music. I don't know. I haven't tried it out yet, but I'm just going to leave it at static. You guys can kind of see that. So yeah, it's working good. I've got the chipset driver in. I've got the cards drivers all set up and good to go. I got the Adrenaline software obviously working really well. Performance, and you know, it's got all that stuff. I'm not overclocking anything. I just have it running at default. So yeah, it's working nicely. Okay, so I decided to benchmark Division 2 instead of messing around with Warzone, mostly because it'll be a lot easier to film. Warzone is not as demanding as this game, so this will be even a better indicator as to this PC's performance. So this is a fairly recent AAA title. It's a DirectX 12 title, if you run it in DirectX 12, which this is going to be running in DirectX 12. And what I can do is run through a benchmark and still be able to hold the camera, and I don't have to mess around with a controller or anything like that. And Warzone doesn't really have a built-in benchmark at this point. I hope that they make one sometime. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show you the settings that I currently have on this thing. So for graphics, I'm running a custom set of settings that's based on the Ultra settings, and I'll show you the few things that I've changed. So I am going to run this with VSync on because this computer is designed to run games like this at 60 FPS. And so this is a 60 FPS monitor, and there's no reason to try to run this faster than that. And you guys will be able to see that it is, well, at least you'll be able to see how it performs, you know, with a VSync monitor. So anywho, shadow quality high. I think this would be on Ultra. That's the main difference there. Spot shadow resolution, I have it on high instead of very high. Contrast, all high. 100% resolution scale. 10 on the sharpening. Ultra on the particle detail. Volumetric fog I have turned down to medium. Volumetric fog doesn't seem to do anything all that awesome in the game except make it run slower. So putting it on medium, you don't get really any change in the way the game looks, but it significantly increases the performance. So I keep that on medium. Even on my really nice computer, I keep it on medium because it just doesn't do anything. Anyway, reflection quality high, local reflection quality on high as well, vegetation quality on high. Let's see, anisotropic filtering, it's hard to say. I have that turned all the way up. Parallax mapping is on. Ambient occlusion is very high. Depth of field is on. Object detail I have up to 70. There is not really any big change when you go higher than 70. So leaving that on 70 is optimal. Let's see. I have extra streaming distance up to max. Neutral lighting is on. Lens flare is on. Vignette effect is on. Water quality is high. Chromatic aberration is on. Projected texture resolution is maximum, and sky textures is on. Terrain quality I have all the way on, and anti-aliasing I have on medium. You turn this up to high, and basically it just eats up FPS on anybody's computer. So it's recommended just to keep it on medium no matter what you're playing on. I play on a 1440p monitor in my house with a much more powerful graphics card than this one, and I keep it on medium. Again, it just doesn't seem to do much except slow the computer down. Anyway, that's the settings I'm running this thing on. I'm going to go ahead and go over here to video so you can see these other things. It is on full screen. It is 1080p. It is going to be running at 60 frames per second, 60 hertz that is. And we have DirectX 12 turned on, as you can see. So I'm going to benchmark. And here we go. So on these settings, GPU usage is not maxed out, so it can do a little more than this, and it's having no problem keeping it up at 60 FPS. One thing to keep in mind is that this monitor is a monitor I use to test these computers I build. It's not it's not the best monitor in the world, so the colors and stuff, if you're thinking, oh, the color's off, it's got nothing to do with the computer. It's just not that great of a monitor. It's kind of old. I keep it in my garage, so it goes to show you. So that's the heaviest part of the benchmark, and you can see that it did not dip below 60, if I am not mistaken. If it did, I missed it. And it went into the high 90s of GPU usage for a brief moment, but that's the score there. So it averaged out to 60 FPS, no problem. And so yeah, it's doing really well. I can show you right now what the temperatures on the GPU look like. Again, we are outdoors, and there it is running, so you guys can see that. At this point of the benchmark, it is going to be running this card typically fairly hard because of the smoke and all that stuff. So yeah, we'll take a look at the temperature. I'm going to go ahead and open up the Radeon stuff. Alt R, if it'll let me. Oh, that's Control R, sorry. Alt R. And we can take a look at the old metrics. So the current temperature right now of the GPU is it's just sitting here running at, let's see, 1400 megahertz. So it's not maxed out right now, but you can see that it's regulating its temperature really well. And there are the fans going, and I think that it'll even stop fan every once in a while. And I'll let you get nice and close. It's pretty quiet. So yeah, this is working really good. And we'll run one more benchmark, not in this game, but I'll go ahead and run a CPU benchmark so you guys can see how the CPU performs. We're going to use Cinebench R20. So I'm going to go ahead and exit. Quit game, yes. Yep. Okay. Closing you play while game is running. There's no game running. So this here that I'm turning on is called Core Temp. And so you can see down here in the bottom right hand of the screen, the temperatures. You guys saw that earlier. I just figured you guys might be curious how I'm doing that. It's a really cool little program called Core Temp. And so that's going to be running in the background. I'm also, so I'm going to pull up Cinebench here real quick. Sorry about that. So as that's loading, I'm also going to grab my keyboard. I'm going to Control Alt. I'm going to have to set the camera down for a second, so sorry about that, guys. Task Manager. I want to have Task Manager running in the background so you guys can see what Windows is saying the speed of the CPU is while it's under load, and it's showing all 6 cores there. So I'll kind of have this off to the side, but before I do that, I'm going to come in here and show you some previous scores. So an earlier score when I did this with like an all-core turbo of 4.3 gigahertz, it got a score of 2610. So there you go, I guess. But yeah, let's go ahead and let you guys see this thing running. I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And there it is. So on this time it got a 2581. So it'll go up and down depending on what you got going on in the background and you know, what you've been doing previously and things like that. You know, little things here and there affect resource allocation. So you're going to get different scores depending on time of day even. But yeah, anyways, it's fairly consistent. Oh, yes. Okay, well, here is the finished product. Finally ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and power it on. You guys have seen it running already, but you know, it's nice to see it running in the enclosure. And yeah, so here I go. Hit the little power button right here. Oh, and there's our i5 sticker, by the way. And there she is. And so that's going to be the standard mode for the internal RGB at this point. If you're hearing a computer right now, it's this one. I'm actually in the middle of editing this video right now, and so it is running. But this guy over here is running nice and quiet. Yep. The ROG RGB Stay at Home PC. Thanks for your interest, and contact me if you think you'd like to take it home. And I'm sure it'll serve you well. Thanks for watching.